Hey, Ghoul Scouts. It's Gabe of the Ghouls Next Door. I bet you are very surprised to see that there is another episode debuting this week. Well, you are in store for a special. So we have a wonderful interview in store for you. Ashlee Blackwell of Graveyard Shift Sisters, as well as the co-producer and co-writer of Horror Noir, which is an amazing documentary that you can find on Shudder, which is an awesome horror subscription service, provides us, the ghouls here, with a lot of content that is very unique and very horror related, because that's their whole thing, right? Surprisingly, to my surprise anyway, Ashlee Blackwell lives here in Philadelphia, and she is having a screening of her film Horror Noir at a local video center, Scribe, this Friday, July 26th, at 7 p.m. Tickets are cheap. You should definitely tune in if you can. Come down, see me and her. We're going to be hanging out, doing some Q&A. But precursor to that, you can catch this interview that I did along with Gretchen Klausing of Pulling Focus, which is an amazing radio show here at WPPM 106.5 FM, talking about film and media analysis, and honestly just perfect for a topic like horror noir. So her and I co-interviewed this amazing woman to talk about horror. So tune in to hear some tidbits from Horror Noir, which is a documentary that talks about Black representation in horror film, as well as Black horror film in general, right? We talk about that a lot here at Ghouls, about how horror can really transcend most genres in being able to express some of our core values and fears, right? And so horror does that. This is an amazing documentary to really, honestly, it's quintessential to your education as someone who loves horror. So if you haven't caught it yet, definitely do so. If you're in the area and you're available on Friday night, come down and see us and see this amazing film and hear from Ashlee Blackwell, who's doing amazing things. And if you can, please check out Graveyard Shift Sisters, which always keeps me informed and educated on what is happening in the horror sphere, as well as upcoming and burgeoning artists who are creating work, specifically women of color who are making really amazing horror films that you really should have on your radar now. So stay tuned for this cool interview from Pulling Focus, featuring myself and Ashlee Blackwell.
Thank you for having me. Hi. So anyway, I would just sort of, one of the reasons why I invited Gabe here this morning is, Pulling Focus is a program about, film and digital media culture. And I've spoken to filmmakers and curators and archivists, and I have yet to really speak to anyone specifically about the horror genre. And maybe that's also because I'm not someone who's really well versed in the horror genre. So I'm going to maybe default to Gabe in certain areas, but I thought we could maybe just get things started just to get a sense from you as to what kind of drew you to the genre. And maybe when was the first moment that you sort of began to have that analysis where this was a genre that you were drawn to, but at the same time, you were not necessarily seeing yourself represented?
Okay. I started really young watching horror films. And I mean like bits and pieces, because I was still very young and I was kind of like exposed to certain things just by proxy of my mother, or her friends. They would watch all kind of genre stuff. So Michael Jackson's Thriller, because I was a kid in the early to mid 80s going on. And, slasher films were big during that time too. So, and also, if you had HBO and you had a VHS player and you were able to dub movies off of television or cable. That's what my mother was doing. So we had kind of an archive of like all kinds of movies, like comedy, drama, everything. But like horror, I don't know why it drew me. I think I just kind of liked that it was something out of the ordinary. And I guess I kind of just was just always inherently kind of a weird or left of center kind of a person. And that kind of stuff was really cool. It was really imaginative, and it chilled me to my bones. It was like scary. It was like, I think for me, I was a person who didn't want to be afraid. Like I always wanted to push those boundaries and face my fears. One of my favorite stories from when I was a kid was watching Michael Jackson's Thriller, which scared me to death. And I'm thinking to myself, one day, I think I was with a babysitter. It was like Saturday afternoon, and you know how they would replay things. They would do like Friday night videos. I think it was like ABC or something like that. And what was I? So, I think I was in the living room by myself, and I'm just like, oh, Thriller's coming on again. I remember I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old. I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this again. I'm not going to be scared because it's during the day. And then I watched it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared. But there was something about it that continued to draw me in. And I think, fast forward a little bit to, when, we moved, it was the same apartment building. This was on North 39th Street off of Powhatan Avenue. So we got a bigger apartment upstairs. And so I had my own room and I had my own TV. And that was great too, because, I would just watch anything I want, anytime I wanted. And I remembered this had to be 1989, 1990, because on Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master had debuted in 1988. So, I think this was Philly 57, so they would do a Friday night movie, and one Friday night they played Nightmare 4, and I loved it so much. It was the best thing I ever watched as like a 7-year-old kid. I loved it so much. I loved it. But I also loved this idea of I loved seeing a girl who was the main focus, and she goes through this transformative arc, and she's able to defeat Freddy in the end. And also, on top of that, there was this Black girl in this movie, brown skin, big glasses, and she kind of fit right in with the group, and that made me jump out of my seat, because again, I wasn't really, you're not really cognizant of it when you're a kid too much, but you're fully aware when you do see yourself on screen in this movie that you love so much, another girl who looks like you that you feel like is your twin, and that really, really excited me. And so again, fast forward again, so I think that was like the first movie that really made me think about gender dynamics in horror, about even just representation in horror too. And it became a mild obsession as I got older. I kind of, I always loved horror. I spent my high school days. This was around, so high school, I was, this is when the Scream boom really happened. So I was at the theater almost every weekend with, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Disturbing Behavior, Urban Legend. I saw.
Well, let's talk. I mean, what I really appreciated about horror noir, history of Black horror, the documentary that you worked on, it was directed by Xavier Bergen, and then you were co-producer and co-writer on, was the connection to history and kind of the rigor that you all applied to what I did, not just having kind of conversations that were like, oh, that was so fun. How crazy. I love that character. Oh my God, Pam Grier. She's so gorgeous. Like, but it was really, which is great. And I love all that, but that you had the, connecting it back to Birth of a Nation, which is, I think for all of us who went to film school and were in media studies class, I mean, that thing is like raised up, and it's like one of the first things you see. And seeing how you all were talking about it and presenting it, I thought was, really important. And so if you could just talk a little bit about how did you and Xavier, first get together and then figure out that was like an important part of what you wanted to do, which was connecting it to history and then connecting it to just kind of contemporary events as you approach the film.
Yeah, it started, the first things first, Dr. Robin Armeens Coleman wrote the book. So it's loosely based on her 10 plus years work of putting this book together. And so, that she's really the foundation. Her hard work is really the foundation of what we were able to do. And, I read her book, of course, multiple times, cover to cover. And the first chapter is really about what does fear look like for Black Americans, and how are we constructed as fear for this white supremacist United States? And it was kind of through Birth of a Nation. So she looks at Gus as the Black boogeyman. So I mean, that was a and all of us as interview subjects, and also us behind the scenes, we acknowledge that. So we wanted to implement that as much as possible. And also it was really great that when we showed clips of Birth of a Nation in the movie theater, that people were responding to it as well. Like our interview subjects were acknowledging that connection to history and how Black people are portrayed on screen. Xavier came on as, the visual kind of visionary kind of guy. When we were kind of looking for directors that we could work with, and he just happened to be in Los Angeles and happened to be really passionate about the project. He had great ideas for lookbooks and things like that. So, Shudder, hired him, and we it was really great to work with him on set. We put together the documentary in Philly. So we worked at Stage 3 Productions, and we did everything in the editing room and things like that. And me and Phil Nobile Jr. and Danielle Burrows, who were the other producers, we kind of came together and were able to work hard on constructing the story and kind of putting it together. And it took a lot of figuring out, like, how do we do this? We want it to be as creative and innovative as possible as far as documentary filmmaking. But and we did that. We did a little bit of both, because we were trying to figure out, do we want to make this linear, or do we want to? So, but I think it was a great compromise of, like, combining the themes that we kind of came up with that kind of encompass Blacks and horror, and Black horror, and also kind of making it kind of a history lesson that's really engaging and very entertaining. So that's kind of how the process worked.
I mean, it worked having it go chronologically, because I think in a lot of ways, you were able to kind of see how, obviously see how things developed. And then as things were changing, you could take on all the different tropes in that same way. So, I mean, sometimes I reject things going chronologically, but I think in this instance, I thought it was completely appropriate and worked really well. What I wanted to ask you about was, I am not always a fan of having in documentary films, like, two people kind of in conversation or being interviewed. Sometimes I just don't really think it works, right? But for whatever reason, how you guys made it work really well. And so I was curious how you all kind of, why are you laughing?
I wanted you to finish your question, because I was kind of going to go on. Like, I hear what you're saying, because it was not easy. It was a challenge. And I think it was a really great combination of both, where it worked really great, but it was also really kind of difficult to kind of, like, keep things together as you're kind of having two people kind of engage. So, I was kind of leading that charge. I was the one in every single interview kind of sitting, behind those cameras, like, literally there'd be me and, like, another camera person. We're literally, like, side to side, because they have to get particular camera angles based on Xavier's input about, and me having to, like, kind of throw at them talking points and kind of talk about, their love of horror and it's not easy, because when two people are talking, it's very, like, I'm really great talking to people one-on-one. That's where I can really, like, it's where you get the best of me. But when there's, like, too many talking heads and too many cooks in the kitchen, and it's a challenge. But it ended up being really great, like, as far as personal and skill growth. Like, you kind of just learn how to put on your producer hat. And I had Phil and I had Kelly Ryan, who also is a partner at Stage 3. They were really great giving me those tips and guidelines, because I honestly think that they had a conversation together and be like, okay, we're just going to let Ashlee just do everything. Just like, we're going to give her the pointers, but no, she's going to lead this charge. And, like, with little to no experience, I just knew the content. But I really do appreciate them kind of nudging me and pushing me and challenging me a little bit and making me come out of my shell even more.
Just one last question about sort of how you approached the interviews. So were they seeing clips in the movie theaters and then responding to them, or had they? I'm just curious, like, how that was set up.
Yeah. So the idea was, I forget how long the reel was that me and the editor worked on. But yeah, we put together a really a clip reel and kind of showed them different clips of movies throughout the history of Black horror. I picked the ones that I thought were particularly important, and we put together the reel. We sent it to the people. God, forgive me, I forget the name of the theater that we shot in. Oh no, I'm gonna circle back and hopefully, and it's in the credits, but yeah. So we sent them everything, and yeah, I mean, we did the interview, we got the talking points that we needed, and then we're just like, okay, guys, we want you to kind of just like, watch these clips and like, any kind of insight you want to talk to each other about what you're seeing, go for it. And so they did, and we let loose, and there was a lot of great behind the scenes stuff that didn't get in horror noir. They were just funny, like just funny little side things, but I'm glad we were able to put some of it in the end credits.
So who were some of the directors that were interviewed, and was there a particular pairing that you were just like, oh, that was gold? Like,
oh wow. The first thing that came to mind is Ernest Dickerson and Rusty Cundieff, because they're both directors, and they had a lot of great things to say. Because I knew they were both immersed in like Black culture and Black ideas. Ernest Dickerson worked with Spike Lee, Rusty Cundieff as well. So they come from these. They come from these cinematic perspectives of Black cinema and Black representation. So I knew they had more to say, not just about horror, but about, Black people and the Black community and Black history. So, and also I kind of just loved that Ernest kind of talked about how Attack the Block was, if I had this when I was a kid, and I agree, because that's why when I talk, I really let loose when I kind of talked about Attack the Block, because I love that movie on the same kind of wavelength that he was kind of talking about it. So that was a great pairing, because they're two directors. I think they knew each other, so it was really great to hear them kind of play off of each other, because even their anecdotes, they had some really great insights on certain things, and like hearing about and I think it was really great for audiences, because I think they loved kind of hearing about behind the scenes stuff, especially when you talked about bones and like all these other different things. So
no, I thought they were an amazing pairing. I thought they were a tremendous pairing, and I also just love the work of Ernest Dickerson as a cinematographer.
Yes.
And I loved him talking about like Jada Pinkett dyeing her hair like right before.
I love the talk of bones with Snoop Dogg being blushing. Every time I see it, I love it.
All right, spoilers. We don't want to do too many spoilers, so we won't say why Snoop was blushing. But anyway, it was. I thought it was a great device, because it kind of broke up the individual academics and film, theorists who were amazing, but it just kind of gave a nice kind of counterbalance to that, and kind of, I think, propelled the film along really well. It's interesting, there's a particular moment where things, at least in the United States, seem to shift in terms of Black horror. And that was, I guess, in the 90s. And what was it that was happening in the 90s that was so unique, and that was really signifying that there was a shift in what was happening in terms of Black horror?
I think just give the open opportunities that Black filmmakers in general had. Daughters of the Dust, that was by Julie Dash. Casey Lemons decided to move more towards directing, a little bit out of acting. There was John Singleton, the Hughes brothers, I believe. So yeah, I think it's because all of these other directors are getting opportunities, and the ones who were into horror, who were interested in making horror films, like Darren Scott, Ernest, and Rusty, they again, they were kind of doing what they were doing in those urban dramas, if you can call them that, or other types of Black films that were going on, and trying to just put like fantastical elements into it, and just they were just kind of making horror movies. I think that's kind of what influenced. I think the idea of this Black film renaissance happening, was directly. There was that marriage of like, oh, we can also make horror movies too. So I think that's kind of how that got rolling.
One of my more recent questions that I have. So I follow Graveyard Shift Sisters because, like I said, Gretchen said, I'm a big fan.
Oh, dear.
And it's for just me as someone who loves like horror and loves looking into it. It always kind of opens my eyes and allows me to look back at something, right? And most recently, an article that did that was the Midsummer article about how we're subverting like the tropes that we see in horror with our Black characters. I can't remember his name. I just know him as Chidi. His
name is Josh in the movie.
Yes. So for me, like I I, for my own personal reasons, have problems with Midsummer as just a film. But reading that article, it made me think like, okay, well, I'll relook at it and kind of like watch this in with a new lens, right? And I feel like that happens a lot with when I'm looking at and reading Graveyard Shift Sisters. So I kind of wanted to talk about how, like, what your opinion is on how horror does, in some ways, subvert the traditional ways and tropes that we see in horror, or not in horror, but in just general with all genres when it comes to Black characters, right? There's some that are mentioned in horror noir, and specifically with like women of color, right? Like we have these traditional tropes that have come up throughout history, and how are we kind of, what does horror do to those?
Before you answer, Ashlee, can you just describe some of those tropes? Like, what are the tropes that you're thinking about?
Yeah, so there's general tropes in regards to women in horror. So we have like the final girl or the blonde victim that we're always kind of seeing over and over again. And then when we have women of color, just in general, right, we have characters like Ma, right? We have like, you know, the one who's just taking care of the white characters, right? Their whole point is to be to help them on their path, right? That happens with men of color as well. But then we also have like the sassy friends, right, who ends up dying or puts herself in way of the main character who happens to be white. And there are ways that we've kind of transformed that or subverted that lens on the horror side in some ways, and then also in some ways kind of drilled those home as well.
Yeah.
So just kind of like what your thoughts are on how horror tackles some of the tropes that we see in all genres.
You made a great point about horror kind of being overlooked and kind of, you know, underutilized, I guess, as something to observe as, you know, something to pursue intellectually or to look at seriously, and just that balance of like these movies are saying something, but they're also very fun and entertaining. I think they clearly do both, and these really like crazy, you know, crazy fantastical ways that I think I think people are thrown off by the fantasy of it and like don't really understand that like, no, Freddy Krueger is not going to kill you if you go to sleep, but you know, what does his character kind of say about is he kind of a representation of a cultural anxiety or something like that? So I think for me with Black characters in horror kind of subverting, honestly, yeah. I mean, kind of moving away from like, you know, just being whole people and being imperfect and being the hero and, you know, making questionable decisions, but also making smart decisions. I think, again, it's really, I'm looking for balance, and I think that's why, you know, movies like Us and, you know, even Get Out or these films that you know, Peele specifically is putting characters in situations where, you know, he's cleverly having them make decisions that are smart and that are very human. And I think that's what I've always kind of wanted. I think that's why I go back to Sheila in Nightmare 4. You know, she was just a character in a movie. She wasn't sassy. She didn't sacrifice herself. She does fit well into that 80s trope of kind of first to die that kind of came up and that became kind of a cultural conversation. But also, you know, she was not that person she wasn't sassy.
Yeah.
Like she was just like a regular kind of girl who she didn't stick out like a sore thumb. She was with her white peers, and she was just kind of one of the girls. And that's what I appreciate. And that's what I'm kind of looking for. That's what subverting tropes to me is. It's just like, you know, we have to constantly face day to day as people of color to see ourselves, and we're always othered and monstrized. I don't know if that's a word, but you know, and you know, being gunned down and all of these things. And this has been going on since the beginning of time. And and we're using, and now there are newer filmmakers and other filmmakers that are utilizing media to kind of, you know, put characters of color in these positions where you're just seeing them as regular people, as real whole human beings. And I think that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I kind of see as a shift. I don't know if Midsommar really does that. I I don't know. I just feel like his character, I'm just like, it's a very white landscape, very white people.
Yes.
And you have this one very chocolate black man. And I don't know, it doesn't really fully make sense to me why this is his thesis project. I mean, you can argue, but it doesn't feel very realistic to me. I mean, I do love that essay that Mary Kay McBrayer wrote. Shout out to her and her podcast, Everything Trying to Kill You. I'm really glad that she came on as a contributor and kind of gave that perspective, because I really do appreciate when she said that. But at the same time, I'm still kind of just like, I don't know.
He didn't need to be there.
And the way he died too, because also what we talk about in horror noir is that he had the most horrific death. Oh, I'm sorry, spoilers. His death was so heinous compared to everyone else's, and you really see it. And other producer of horror noir, Phil, was telling me, he was just like, yeah, it's kind of just like his death kind of like, it felt like what happened in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when you first see Leatherface and he brings that hammer down on that one, I forget the character's name, but he kills him in the house, and he gets that sledgehammer to the head, and he just starts like shaking and convulsing, and this is really visceral and just very jarring. So yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah. There's a lot in that specific movie that I feel like wasn't fully thought out, or is from a lens that didn't have a right to say the things that they were saying. But that's my own opinion about Midsommar, which is a whole different rant. Yeah, but I think what's interesting about horror and kind of what I wanted to talk about is more about films like Us, right? So we see on screen an entire family, right? And it's not remarked upon or a part of the thing, like, this is a black family, right? It just, this is a black family, right? It's we get to see them in their, it's not a trope. They're just the characters that we're following, right? And I think there's a difference that we're seeing between the characters in that versus the characters in Get Out, where race is very much what we're seeing. So I kind of wanted to like pick your brain about kind of the violence and the message that's coming from Get Out versus like kind of the leniency and the freedom that Jordan Peele gets with Us in just having black characters just be characters.
Yeah, so hopefully I can answer this fully. I think because I'm thinking off the top of my head with Us, I think he just kind of like that was his kind of kitchen sink movie. He made this really like tight, groundbreaking movie that really, obviously the story is he wrote it before Trump was elected, so it wasn't really, he was writing it when, Obama, where a lot of people are having these conversations. And the joke I always love that another podcaster has said, racism is over, woo! And, and that's not really the case. And that's what I think he was writing to, like these do-gooder liberals who really aren't so well-intentioned and also don't, again, look at black people as full people, that people who deserve to have autonomy over their bodies and minds and expression. So I think I think Us is much more of an abstract look at class relations. And I don't know, I hope I'm answering your question. I just... So I think Get Out is, it really, it was like, I guess it was kind of lightning in a bottle, where it like perfectly was speaking to the times that we're in when it came out. And I think that's why people responded to it so well. And it was also a really, really great film. And I thought it was super creative the way he implemented it. There's a lot of nuances that he put in as far as like the motive of the Armitage family. And I also am a conspiracy theorist myself. So I kind of like the whole idea of a secret society that's just stealing black people. Like, I think it's scary. It is scary. And again, he's going off of these fantastical elements, but also kind of implementing like real life situations into it. So with Us, I think he does the same thing. I think there are a lot of themes in Us that are really underexplored, but I also think that Peele does a lot of things on purpose. I think he wants us to think more and more and more about what we're seeing in the film and his little Easter eggs and things like that. And he's also a big fan of the genre. I remember listening to another podcast called Shockwaves, where Rebecca McKendry, who's also a horror scholar, filmmaker, she's amazing. And she's kind of talking about when he was like doing Get Out, where like I think he had a small office in the Blumhouse studios, and like he had like all of these like again like a director does. They have a lookbook, they have visuals that they kind of bounce off to kind of create with their own vision. And she was seeing all of these obscure horror films, and she was like kind of like making the point that like he is a real fan of the genre and a real like student and intellectual scholar of this genre. So yeah, I think Us is I really, really, I think that was his point too. He has this like, this dark skinned Black family just on vacation, but there's more going on. I think it doesn't have to be about race. And I think, again, when he first started talking about what Us was going to be, he was like, yeah, I grew up loving Poltergeist and all those movies, and there were white families. And I just want to see a Black family go through it and see what happens with them. And I'm just like, yes. So that's what I really loved about both of those films. And I hope I answered your question.
You did. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I kind of want to take us back to, I want to take us back to a moment in film history that a lot of the people cited in horror noir, and that is 1968 and Night of the Living Dead. And what I found very interesting was just kind of the conversation around the casting and just how, George Romero, like, that wasn't his intention to have a Black man be the lead character in this zombie movie, but that decision, the shockwaves that sent through. So what has been your experience, and when was maybe the first time you saw the Night of the Living Dead?
Wow. So I think first things first, I think the casting had a lot to do with Romero's upbringing. He is a man of color, and he also, I forget exactly where he grew up, but I think he kind of comes from a very multicultural upbringing in space and just even his social circle. And I think that's probably why he wasn't looking at, there's this Black guy that, I think he saw Dwayne Jones as Black, but he wasn't like worried about that influencing his movie. He just, I really do think he thought he was the best guy for the job. Not that he didn't see color, that's not what I'm saying, but I think just because of his surroundings and his background as well, I think it's just he didn't put, restrictions on who he thought he could cast for this particular film. And he was also part of that. I think that was kind of where you saw the turn of like new Hollywood and these kind of emerging filmmakers. That's when you saw kind of Wes Craven kind of come into the picture and things like that. And they were these kind of rogue maverick filmmakers who were just making the films that they wanted to see, or they wanted to really make a statement about what's going on in the world. And their discontent with what the 60s were supposed to do and didn't do. And I think and Ben's death at the end, I don't remember when I saw it, but I do remember seeing it relatively young and being kind of taken aback by that. And then, but it also was one of those movies that really made me want to look into, because I always thought about the time that it was, the time that it came out, and also what happens in the film, and just kind of like, is there any kind of correlation? Are people talking about that? For me, the best part of Night of the Living Dead and kind of experiencing it is kind of just talking to my elders. I know that a lot of people in the Black communities were seeing these films and like going in droves. I know Tanana Redu's husband, Stephen Barnes, I think one of the stories I remember him hearing talking about this film is like the Black community just went, there's a Black guy in this movie. Again, there's a Black man in this movie, and he's kind of the central focus. And so I always like hearing about the people who were there in the 60s and going to see this movie and being so, again, that's why I love horror so much, because you didn't really see that. I mean, Sidney Poitier was like really the only kind of leading man at the time, and maybe Bill Cosby, but this other guy that really no one knew who he was, in this really fantastical movie that was saying a lot about what people of color and Black people were going through in the 60s. I think that was the drawing power of that. And the Black community and Black audiences, again, are finally getting the respect that they deserve for really pushing horror into the direction I think it is now.
All right. Well, okay. Well, you mentioned something that I think is also really, you mentioned audiences and going to movie theaters. And to me, that's something, again, not necessarily being somebody who goes to see a lot of horror films because I'm kind of a wimp, but that audience experience, that collective viewing experience seems to me to be something that's really kind of important to the genre. And now, again, the documentary is on a streaming platform like Shudder. Like, what is the correlation, do you think? Is the audience experience still something really important to the success of horror, or could it survive exclusively if it was just in a streaming online environment?
Oh no, definitely. Yeah, it's all about money. Box office numbers determine whether you're going to get sequels, whether even filmmakers in general are getting opportunities. Again, Jordan Peele really opened up the doors. Like again, like I know people are ho hum about horror remakes, but he could do a lot with Candyman. I know we talked about it. I get teased every time because of my reaction to Candyman and horror noir. I get teased about it all the time, but I liked what he said about it because I think we were kind of in agreement about it. And so I just going back to what you were kind of saying, yeah, I think the audience experience is important. Now, I'm the exception to the rule. I am not a talker in theaters. I like, especially when I'm seeing a movie for the first time, I'm one of those Black people that's just like, you need to just, no, this is not this. We don't talk. Like, just I'm such an intense film fan. I'm just like, no, if I'm watching something for the first time, I don't need your commentary. Like, I want to watch this and I want to watch it in peace. But then there's also the other exceptions where you're going to kind of like like an event where like it's a movie that's been out for 30 plus years and like we're all fans, we're all going to see it. Of course, we're going to be like talking back to the screen and things like that. Like my favorite was I went to go see Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. And that was kind of an event for like, I think that was like a Philly Comic-Con like off-site event that was going on. And so, yeah, we're all talking and there's commentary from Heather Langenkamp and Chuck Russell, I believe, is the director, and they were kind of like talking about they were doing commentary on the film. We're all kind of like, saying the lines. And so those communal experiences are fun. But like, no, when I'm like going to see a first release, no, keep it down.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you mentioned sort of the young women of color, these up and coming directors, and who are some people that we should be paying attention to, and how can we see their work? Like, where can we find them?
Sure. So I'm going to try to run this down as best as I can. So Zena Sade Dixon, she has some movies on Amazon and Vimeo. I think her movie Night of the Witch is on Amazon. It's a really great short film. Nikiatu Jusu, I believe Suicide by Sunlight, which was a Sundance pick for this year. That's going to be at Black Star Film Festival this August in the shorts program. So she's really great. Her co-writer for that is Arshanae Williams. Her movie Paralysis is on Amazon, I believe, as well. There's Zendasha Brown, who she's from Louisiana, so she's steeped in Southern Gothic. Like that is her jam. So Blood Runs Down. I'm not sure if that's available streaming just yet, but I think she told me when we saw each other where she's going to do this. She's finalizing the film festival circuit. And I think probably at the end of the year next year that film would be available. That's a great representation of Southern Gothic. She has a really good grasp on it. She films in Louisiana, so she's working on a new movie called Haint that she's probably going to shop around the film festivals as well. Oh, wow. I'm like blanking. But yeah, I mean, those are the women off the top of my head that are really great. That, again, I think my thesis is that Black women are the next emerging. There's going to be men involved too, but I think we should really be focusing on the women because I think their stories are a little bit more unique and are going to be more focused on Black women and are going to have a lot to say about them. And again, making the Black experience a human experience and humanizing Black women and Black men where we're not seeing them humanized in other spaces. So this is going to be great.
There's one thing I love about what you have on Graveyard Shift Sisters, which is this Take Action tab. And why is that important for you? And talk about how folks can take action.
Yeah, I think I wrote that years ago. I think, again, that's part of just my thank you, Temple University, for kind of like giving me kind of this intellectual rigor of like really wanting to give people the resources and the tools they can to kind of do it themselves. And a part of taking action is supporting these women. Like, there's a list, of these women and men directors. I love talking to men directors too for Graveyard Shift Sisters. There's all that stuff there. Pick up a book. If you are an educator in media arts, high school, college, and you have the open opportunity to kind of talk about and teach whatever you want, use this resource. If you're into horror, use Graveyard Shift Sisters as a resource for, a lecture series or anything like that. And also because it's not just my website too, there's other websites as well that are doing really great work and talking to people of color in general, filmmakers who are into the who are into the horror genre. So that's kind of like, yeah, I think the Take Action tab is kind of just like saying, here's all this stuff. And, because again, horror noir and My Final Girl, the My Final Girl as kind of this kind of mini kind of documentary, and horror noir, the book, is what gave me the inspiration to do what I do. So I just want to give that and more to other people.
I was wondering if you could talk about The Girl with All the Gifts, because that was a film that I was not aware of. And it was, again, me being a horror wimp, was one of the films there that I was like, I want to see that. I really want to see that. And so talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we incorporated those two films because if we were trying to really focus on American horror, but it was hard to kind of not talk about like where the genre is headed without talking about those two films, because they're really important about showing Black people as kind of heroes or central characters, and Black kids specifically, because I don't think John Boyega was even 18 when he did Attack the Block. And since Senia Nanua is definitely much younger, she's about probably 15, 16 now, maybe. So The Girl with All the Gifts is a movie that I really loved. Because I'm hashtag film Twitter, so I'm a part of that kind of community. So I'm knowing about all of these new films. And so when I heard about The Girl with All the Gifts, that's actually based on a book of the same name, I believe. And then the writer of the book was also the screenwriter of the film, and maybe the director as well. Forgive me if I'm getting my information incorrect, but I know he was a really critical part of putting that film together. And also, I know, like we say in the documentary, Senia came in and just kind of like, killed the role, just kind of like Dwayne Jones in Night of the Living Dead, and that's why they gave her the opportunity to do it. Because I know in the book she's a white character, and also her teacher in the film is Black, and they switched, so they kind of did kind of reversals like that. So I heard about the movie and I saw this little Black girl and I was like, this is, again, I was just so excited. Like a lot of other people in horror noir were kind of talking about it, like excited to see this Black girl in this movie. And it's a movie about, again, it's a zombie apocalypse movie, and it's science and horror kind of merging and coming together, where she's kind of this new, she's kind of the evolution of humans, where it's like now, us as the way our biology is made up, we're kind of dying off, and these new people that were birthed from their mothers, they killed their mothers, unfortunately, but like in spoilers, they kind of mutated into these new beings, and this Black girl decides to take the reins and say, well, this is the new world, so sorry. and I don't think she's really even that apologetic about it. It's just like, this is she recognized early on that this is how the world is just going to evolve, and old people are going to die off. And I think there's really great insight and commentary about that in horror noir.
Gabe, I know one thing that you and I were sort of talking about in preparation for this interview was also how horror can be a way for people to deal with just
trauma.
Trauma and the world. And when I was kind of looking at, The Girl with All the Gifts and just the state of our world, and also this kind of link to Afrofuturism.
Yes.
I just thought it was really interesting. And is it your sense that this is kind of where things are evolving, or how, do you also see horror as this way of directors addressing kind of the issues and problems in society?
Yeah, so I definitely, and also again, I want that. I really would like that balance where there's gonna be people that are filmmakers, because I've read a ton of scripts now. So there's gonna be these emerging filmmakers that are going to be addressing kind of these external kind of social problems that are universal, but also kind of the internal that are universal. I work really closely with Ashlee Williams, and she's got and a lot of her scripts really come from these personal experiences, but that feel really visceral and really real. Kind of just talking about like people who are dealing with kind of internal trauma, which whether it's either mentally or physically, and how does that kind of how would that manifest in a horror film that I write or direct? And so a lot of people are doing both, and they're talking about they're talking about problems that are going on. I read a really funny script about cultural appropriation, about dystopia, about dictatorship and totalitarianism. People who are really kind of having this anxiety about the Trump administration and where we're going. It's going to be a Handmaid's Tale situation. So how do I fit into that as a Black person, and how do I make it horror? So that's definitely going on. Again, I don't want to. I'm seeing a lot of Black creatives just feel more inspired and more. They feel more. I think there's a confidence that I feel like post Get Out is giving a lot of Black filmmakers, that they don't feel like they're snuffed. I know, again, Tanana Reeve Dew is a great person to kind of talk to and follow on Twitter, because she's been trying to make Black horror films for decades, and she sees Jordan Peele. She's like, finally, we're getting, because she's been pushing and doing so many things, and executives just not giving her the respect of her work and her vision, and now. They're fine because Jordan Peele made it dollars and cents, and so now they're I'm hoping that this is a trajectory that opens up the bridge for people who are even more unknown. Again, Jordan Peele is remaking Candyman, and he hired Nia DaCosta to do it. So she's the first Black woman who's going to direct a mainstream horror film. I checked. So this is amazing. This is groundbreaking, and she's also, again, another side resource. Switchblade Sisters is another great podcast. She's been on it with the host April Wolf, and she kind of talked about just loving horror and finally getting an opportunity to direct a horror film. So it's slow, but because I'm an impatient person, so I feel like it's slow, but it is happening. I'm hoping to be a part of helping people get in the door and push forward and make some really great art.
I'm just curious. I love that you're here in Philly. And this is super exciting. And so, and this is no pressure and but what is there something specific about you being able to be here, or how does that work, that you're working in the industry and you're doing all of this, but you're here in Philly? Like,
honestly, it is just circumstance. I was born and raised here. I am. I always say I claim dual citizenship. I'm from Philadelphia, but I'm also from Upper Darby. I graduated from Upper Darby High School. So yeah, I'm just here, and it was kismet. I mean, Phil Newbill Jr. He worked at Stage 3, and he saw Get Out and got excited and was like, I got to talk to Ashlee about this. And, went to Kelly and said, hey, we could make a documentary about this. And we just happened to be all in the same city, and things worked out really great. Again, it was the best circumstance that could have possibly happened, where, there was no kind of commuter. I'm really proud that it was done here. A lot of people don't know that. So, but I'm really glad that we were able to produce it and put it together here. We did film in LA. We filmed in LA and also College Station, Texas, which is 2 hours outside of Austin. So that's where we filmed, but everything was done in-house as far as the editing, pre-production, all that stuff.
All right, cool. Awesome. Again, Ashlee Blackwell, thank you so much for being a guest here at WPPM. And where can people find the film? Can they find, Graveyard Shift Sisters?
Yeah, it's graveyardshiftSisters.com. Horror Noir is streaming on Shuddered. It's also on iTunes. I am on Twitter at Graveyard Sister, and from there you can find everything. I have a Tumblr page and a Facebook page you can like as well.
All right, awesome. And Ashlee Blackwell and Gabe Castro will be at Scribe Video Center on Friday, July 26th at 7 p.m. Ashlee will be there presenting a screening of Horror Noir, A History of Black Horror, and talking about it. And it's just been so great to have you here in the studios this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I had fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Gabe.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.